Disturbing news out of the Middle East as a new report from the International Atomic Energy Agency reveals that the Iranian regime's march towards weapons-grade enriched uranium has greatly accelerated. In fact, the Wall Street Journal's headline about this read, quote, Iran has enough highly enriched uranium for 6 nuclear weapons. Well, Iranian-American journalist Lisa Daftari joins us now. Lisa, what can you tell us?
Are we surprised about this news? No, because, over the last few years, how many reports have we seen where they tell us they're 2 years from the bomb, they're 1 year from the bomb, they're 6 months from the bomb, they're 2 weeks from the bomb? My advice, and I've done a lot of briefings in Washington about this, my advice to lawmakers, to anyone who's dealing with this, to NGOs, to the IAEA, is to assume that they already have the bomb. They already have the capability to deliver that bomb, and that they are acting in that way. Now, is it a lot of chest thumping by the Iran regime? Absolutely. That's part of their handbook. This positioning is part of their play. They had 4 years of a very lax foreign policy under the Biden administration. Sanctions were very loosely enforced. They were able to sell oil. They raked in north of $100 billion that they put into their terror sprees. The Iranian people were out on the streets. They were telling us about their disenchantment. They want this regime gone. So they found themselves in a very tight position in terms of international and domestic pressure. Now the Trump administration is playing a very different tune, putting them under pressure. Putting additional sanctions, really enforcing that pressure campaign that we saw under the first Trump administration. So this is, again, more chest thumping, yes, but I would take the report at face value that they are closer to a bomb, that the centrifuges are spinning, they are enriching uranium, and they are finding ways to deliver a bomb. That has to be the assumption going forward.
Well, Lisa, help us understand the Iranian regime. I feel like a lot of folks maybe don't quite understand what's happening in Tehran. I mean, would they really truthfully use a nuclear bomb, or is this just, hey, we want to be one of the players in the game, we want to have a bomb just to say we have it, or would they actually use it?
Great question. I've always said this about the Iran regime: sadistic, yes; masochistic, no. They wouldn't use the bomb in terms of ending their own reign. They want to stay in power. Look, when you look at the optics of all of this, the sanctions, the pressure, the various revolutions that we've seen inside Iran, whether it was 2009 with the Green Revolution, more recently with the Women, Life, Freedom uprisings. I just read a statistic yesterday that said there have been 484 protests, small, medium, and large protests in Iran in January and February alone. In those 2 months alone, when you think about that, in different parts of the country, there is so much disenchantment. So the people inside Iran and their ability to launch a grassroots revolution is really their Achilles heel. They're not as afraid of Washington as they are of their own people launching a potential and successful revolution to remove the regime. Now, again, 46 years they have remained, they have survived all these different pressures from international, internal. So they wouldn't use the bomb because they know that it would be the end of this regime. They want to stay in power. So they play this saber rattling, they straddle between, we're going to back down, we're going to concede, and then we're going to chest thump, and we're going to show you who we are. So this is what we're seeing. It's all acting out, and it's all part of their handbook.
So how should the free world fight back? I think when you hear people in interviews talk about Iran, even people in Israel, there's always this distinction. There's the regime, and then there's the Iranian people.
Thank you.
So how does the average Joe or Western democracies help the Iranian people, take back their country?
Right. I mean, that is probably the $64 million question. And that is, even American lawmakers, the Republicans, the Democrats, they've always gone between, and this ping pong between bomb Iran or let them get the bomb. And the truth lies somewhere in the middle. We don't want to bomb Iran because we have 80 million people in Iran, the majority of whom are on our side. They want to see freedom. They want to see secular democracy. They want this regime gone. So we don't want to bomb Iran. We want them to know that we're on their side and we're going to work together. Now, this particular administration, the Trump administration, has shied away from using, terms like regime change. They talk about behavioral change. But what I do think is effective when it comes to Iran's regime is to have all options on the table. So we will start with diplomacy. And if you're going to, work with the United States, then we're going to have it be peaceful, and we're going to make concessions, and we're going to maybe have a discussion, all the way to leaving the military option on the table, because might is the language of the Middle East, particularly the Iran regime. It's very, very important to note that the Iranian people are looking to the West for help,
Mm.
and I think it is important for whatever strategy that the West uses to incorporate that option of having the Iranian people who are willing to go out onto the streets and are willing to, sacrifice their lives. They truly are sacrificing their lives when you come out onto the streets. Whether it's women taking off their hijab or the men who are supporting them and coming out onto the streets, it's dangerous to stand up to this regime, and people are willing to do it. So if you have that boiling point, you have an Iranian population that's willing to cooperate, and I think the West is under the Trump administration has it right. Apply the pressure, apply the sanctions, and then see if they will make the concessions. But we know that they won't. We know that they will not play along with the West, and then we can take it from there. But I think it's very important to show that position of strength and not weakness, like we saw for the past 4 years. The Iran regime took advantage of the Biden administration. We saw October 7th happen because of the positioning of the White House, because they were able to rake in north of $100 billion and then go on a terror spree and fund Hamas and Hezbollah and other factions in Gaza and the West Bank. And we're seeing all of that. So we have to stop this. We have to work with the moderate Arab states like we saw in the Abraham Accords, because they also want to stop the Islamic Republic. They want to stop Iran's regime from marching forward in the region. We want to stop them from being in South America and places like Venezuela and other South American countries where they have set up shop. That's right at our footstep of our country. So we cannot allow that. We cannot allow that. So I think that is really the positioning that we need to take. We need to understand and take it at face value and not underestimate the power of the Islamic Republic. But at the same time, I think the Trump administration is handling this well for the first month and a half in office.
Lisa, you are a wealth of information and clarity. One last question in summary. So you mentioned the word saber rattling. So should the West, should the United States, should Israel see this report, this very disturbing report from the IAEA, as they're just trying to jockey for position? You don't really have anything to worry about. How should people view this in closing?
Right. I think Israel in particular, and of course the United States, Israel and the United States being one in this scenario, obviously they are our eyes and ears and on the ground in the Middle East, should always keep an eye out. Look what happened on October 7th. And I think that was, it was hard to believe that there was such a security lapse, because Israel has to be right 24/7. They can't get one thing wrong. And the terrorists have to get it right one time, right? I think, Israel has always had, good detailed intel on Iran's nuclear program. I don't think they're waiting for the IAEA to fill them in on what's the latest.
Right.
And I think that and that's the relationship we have with Israel, that we can rely on that. I just gave a talk last week about this relationship. For those who are isolationists and say, why do we give the checks to Israel? It's not charity that we give to Israel. It's a symbiotic relationship that the United States has with Israel. And we get as much out of that relationship as Israel gets out of that relationship. They're doing a lot of our dirty work. They're doing a lot of the intel, and they're reporting back to us. They've helped us foil terror plots that have been against U.S. assets in the region and around the world. And again, we rely on their intel and they rely on ours. So I think it's very important that we continue to work together, that relationship has no daylight between it, like we saw in the last 4 years and how we saw under the Obama administration. We cannot afford that. That relationship has to be ironclad. We have to be one and the same. And I think this report, I think, is more for, the average Joe who's reading this and saying, oh, wow. But I don't think that, the people who are in positions of power, they know that Iran is serious about having a nuclear weapon, that the regime is, we have to assume that they have it, they want to deliver it, and they will use it. And I think that is the best way to go forward, is to make those assumptions and deal with the regime in that way.
Lisa Daftari, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.